Today, I'm speaking to Janine Coombes. She's a marketing coach with over 20 years industry experience. She's going to be giving us some fantastic tips today about how to create a sizzling hot offer, how to price it, and how to approach niching in a completely different way. You're listening to the Life Friendly Business podcast, where we lift the lid on the reality of running a business around family life and shine a light on the mindset gremlins which may well be stopping you from stepping into your zone of genius. I'm Erin, the Life Friendly Business mentor, and I'm here to empower you to succeed through personalised support, strategic business training, and ongoing mentorship. Let's work together to champion your goals and ignite your potential so that you can create your very own life-friendly business. Hi, Janine. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us, why did you start your own business in the first place?
I had a career in marketing and I fully intended to go back to work after having my first child. But as it went on, the maternity leave, that is, less and less wanted to do the hour commute, 2 hour round trip. In fact, it was more like 2.5 hours. And just, I think I mean, we all do this, but I fell in love with my child and I was just like, do you know what? I prefer to spend all my time with him. And luckily for me, I was able to hand in my notice, to look after him. And then I started thinking about what I could do instead of going back to corporate, because I really didn't want to go back to corporate. And I kind of had lost the passion for marketing. So I was looking at all sorts of wild and wacky ideas. But then gradually, one by one, some of my friends started setting up businesses, and things that were obvious to me, they were getting wrong. And they were going about it the wrong way, or they had the wrong approach. And I just thought, I can't keep my nose out. I just cannot keep my nose out. I need to help small businesses with marketing.
I think that's a great example as well of how things just kind of opportunities present themselves. So you were consciously looking to do something different, but then you kind of realized there was this gap here that other people didn't have the knowledge that you had.
Yeah. I would say snowballed, but I mean, that makes it sound like there was like velocity behind it. A very, very slowly pushed snowball happened.
So, and how long ago was this?
Oh gosh, it must have been 13 years ago when I left corporate.
And how has your business evolved since then?
It was a very slow evolution. To begin with, I mean, I was doing everything. I would do a brand workshop for a bathroom showroom. And then a month later, I'd do a training course for like 100 translators. And I would help somebody else with their Facebook account. And it was all over the place. And I feel like I could not have shortcut that process. Like, I can't imagine a single person who could have intervened and helped me speed up that process. You know, not a marketing expert, not a coach, not a therapist. Just like, I needed to go through that. I needed to test and try different things on. So that process did take quite a while. And then eventually it got to the point where I think I'd absorbed so much shoulds and must-haves, and you've got to be on every, I had all the pressure of, oh my God, I'm a marketer. Everybody's going to expect me to be on every single social media platform. They're going to expect me to know everything. They're going to expect me to know about PR and advertising and everything. And eventually I realized that all this activity that I was doing, trying to create content, and at the same time, not knowing who it was for or what I was selling, I realized that actually I had to put some offers together. So that was, for me, that was a missing piece of the jigsaw. It was like, I have not got clear offers. I am not offering anything to anyone, which sounds so stupid. But at the time, I didn't see it. And ironically, the last role I held in corporate was propositions manager. I was putting together offers.
But, I love this because I think it's really important to share this, because so many of the women that I work with, like you say, it's been a slow evolution, especially if you're raising kids at the same time. And you said that no one could have shortcut that for you. And I totally relate to that because this is my fifth business. It's my fifth business. And I think so many people that I speak to now, especially with all the noise on social and everything, they think that if they're starting a business, they should have everything nailed within the first 6 months and, even the first year. And actually the reality is that, like you say, it is a process that you go through when you start running a business. And so many people as well, it happens, what's the word? Not organically, but like they find themselves doing the thing that they're doing. And so they haven't really set it up as a business from the beginning. And it's only when they get going that they think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not really clear about what I'm actually selling here.
Yeah. In fact, funny you should say that. It did take me a year or two to realize I had set up a business. Even though I had registered my business, it was like, oh, I'm a business. I'm managing I'm running a business. I should probably approach it like that and set up some systems and set up some processes. Like it was a slow dawning realization.
Yeah. And I think it is for many of the people in my community as well. So what does your business look like today?
My business now is, I help coaches, mainly coach-shaped people, I say, because I also help coaches and mentors. They don't always fit that title of coach. And I help them earn more. And it's through the offer positioning and the pricing. And then once that is clear, who you're targeting, the marketing and everything becomes easier. I help people mainly with very high touch, high support services. So I've got a one-to-one program, and I've got a hybrid group program, but it has one-to-one in it. I just can't keep my nose out. That seems to be the theme of, I just can't keep my nose out. Like I did launch a course, an online course a few years ago, and it just drove me mad because people come to the end of it and I could see that they needed more help, but I hadn't offered the extra help. So I know it works for some companies, but for me, I just want to get stuck in there and really get to grips with it. Or maybe I'm a perfectionist. I don't think of myself as a perfectionist, but it feels like I want to help more.
But I think it's so much more satisfying when you actually have that connection one-to-one and find out what's happening with them. Because, like we're all told about reach the millions, make an impact on the millions. And so you think, right, I'm going to do an online course and I'm going to do these things or a membership. But actually, when you're not having those conversations one-on-one, whether it's through emails or texts or actual sessions, you don't get to hear them go through, you don't get to see them go through the process and come out the other side. Whereas when you have that closer connection to your clients, I just find it so much more satisfying to see that end result.
And it kind of helps you, doesn't it, with your content, with inspiration and with the evolution of your services. And it is a loop. It's a feedback loop. Whereas I don't know how people do it if they're purely selling DIY services. I suppose they have to do more research, maybe.
Yeah. And so what would you say are the biggest mistakes that people are making with their offers?
It's tricky to know when you've nailed your offer or not. I mean, it's easy to find out when you haven't, because you're not selling. You're finding it difficult to sell. You're finding it difficult to think of what content to create for your businesses. Those are a couple of the symptoms. But sometimes people have gone through multitudes of ideal customer avatar exercises, maybe even some research. And then often when I talk to them, they're like, oh, well, I've nailed my messaging. Like I know who I'm targeting. You're like, have you now? And then we dig into it and they haven't gone sharp enough. They're just not clear enough on exactly who they're targeting with what. And it is unhelpful sometimes to be too niche with your overarching business and then unclear with each of your offers and who they're targeting, which is why I tend to do it the other way around, which has worked for me. But also I found a lot of my clients really like that flip. Instead of thinking of the niche for your whole business or the target market for your whole business, look at your offers. Is it clear who they are for and what they're going to get out of it? Is the value clear for each one of your offers? That is often a more practical, useful way to approach the targeting of what you're doing, the positioning of what you're doing.
That's really interesting, because I know, especially with coaches, when they come to me, one of the things they can often be really stuck in is, I need to work out my niche, and it's literally paralyzing them. So, and because with coaches, I guess you can technically help anyone, because, you know, it's about asking them the right questions to find their own answers. And so, you know, they could be helping people in all sorts of things. So, okay, explain again then how you approach niching.
So I call it my reverse niching technique, because essentially what you're doing is you're looking at the offers, you're doing it bottom up, you're doing it in the reverse order. Instead of saying, okay, I've got a coaching practice, what is my niche? Who should I be targeting? It's like, oh, okay, who am I currently attracting on my offers? Who do I enjoy working with on my offers? Who's buying already, who I love working with? You know, what are their problems that I'm solving on each of one of my services? If it's just like one main service, then just look at the people who you've been working with most, who are the easiest people to sell to, who appreciate your work the most, who's most enjoyable to work with, like on a job satisfaction basis. There will be themes in there, and then the niche will, or, you know, I don't even like using the word niche because it's so interchangeable, but like your target market will reveal itself. And then if you have several offers that are targeting slightly different markets, or slightly different groups of people, or slightly different problems, or slightly different ways that you're solving their problems, then you can look at those and then go, oh, okay, the overarching theme here is this. I tend to work with these kinds of people at this stage of their journey, and that can be your niche. It's kind of like an evolution. It's a slow unveiling of your niche. It's what I've done. You know, I mean, the reason I'm so passionate about it is because that's what's happened to me. I wanted to niche. It's like, oh, I know I should really be sharper with my niche, but I felt that it was like a pressure, an external pressure that I didn't really need. It was like I just knew I needed to experiment, and it took me ages to go, oh, okay, so I don't enjoy those people as much. I don't get so good results with those types of people. And eventually my niche, if we want to call it that, revealed itself. It was a much better way to do it for me.
So one question which I feel would come up with this is people panicking then about, if I've got different offers aimed at different people, how do I then put out a consistent message on social, for example, like if they're talking to different people? So how would you advise that they did that?
So what you rarely find is that the different audiences for the different offers are completely different people. Like the most common example of that would be like I've worked with a few leadership coaches who coach individuals, but they'll also offer like training programs, maybe even team build, team dynamic processes and things like that. So they've got individuals they're targeting, but then corporates they're targeting. So the easiest way to do that, it's not a must-have, but it would be to have one channel serving the corporate market and one channel serving the individual market. That's an easy way to do it. But you can mix it up. Humans are reasonably sheep-like, and they will only sort of pay attention to what is appropriate to them. So you could have a LinkedIn post. LinkedIn is my main channel. A LinkedIn post one day targeting corporates, and then the next day a LinkedIn post targeting individuals. And the individuals will just ignore the corporate ones. They start reading, oh, well, that's obviously not for me, and they just move on. It's quite freaky how that happens. There was an example when I worked in corporate. I was working for National Rent-A-Car. They've rebranded to Europcar since then. And we had two brands. We had a brand for corporate and we had a brand for the holiday makers. The holiday makers was Alamo, and it was this sky blue colour. And the national brand was green, like a forest green. And we tried a dual branded kiosk, like at the airport, you know, when you go to get your rent-a-car. We tried a dual branded one, and we had the two colours and the two logos next to each other. And then we surveyed people, you know, was it confusing? Did the other sign put you off? And the resounding answer from, I think it was 100% of respondents, was I didn't even notice the other sign. I was only looking for the Alamo sign. I was only looking for the national sign. Like, people were just looking for what's interesting to us. They're only going to respond and notice the messages that hit them, and they're like, oh, I resonate with that. They'll only notice that one. So to an extent, you don't have to worry as much as people do about mixed messages, as long as it's not mixed messages in the same post.
Yes, because I agree. I guess it's that whole thing about people being able to self-identify when they're scrolling. So then it's about, in that message, how you're talking to their problems or, their challenges, and they will see that and then take interest in it. But if it's not relevant to them, they're just going to scroll on by, and that's okay. So that's really good to hear. What other tips would you give people for niching?
Don't force it is the absolute number one. There's so much out there telling people to niche, and the riches are in the niches, and you must niche, and it's the answer to your wildest dreams. I just don't think you can force it. I think that's the main piece of advice I'd give. I know we've touched on this before, but the second step is just be clear on your offers. Like, who is each one of those offers for? I think I'd argue that's more important than nailing your niche, because you can then just focus on that one offer and perfect it and get the ball rolling and create good content around it and ask questions around it. And then, marketing is all about testing and trialing and being open to experimentation, isn't it? You're not going to nail it first time. And that's why I think it's easier to toy with offers than it is with your whole niche.
And just to touch back on what you were saying before about when you're thinking about who you're currently working with and who you enjoy working with. And this is something we were talking about in my mastermind, actually, because when you are designing your offers and thinking about that, like, that is the point of running your own business, is that you get to choose who you have in your world and who you want to attract. So I think, there are still a lot of people who feel like they're not in control of that. It's like, well, I should be working with that person. I should be targeting that kind of person. But do you actually want to? Are those the people that you find most satisfying? And I love it when you said, who are the people that appreciate you the most and the help that you can give? I really like that.
I've worked with some people, and they're slightly earlier. I mean, my heartland isn't people who are completely new to social media, but some of my clients I've worked with, and they think everything I say is utter genius and the first person to ever utter it. And it's so satisfying, because it's like, this is not new stuff, guys. This is not, I didn't invent the lead magnet. It's like, wow.
And this is the thing. Yeah, you only need to be 2 steps ahead of the person behind you, don't you, in order to help them. And so many people get caught in the, like, oh God, but I don't want to position myself as an expert. But it's like, yes, but you can offer so much value to that person who's never heard of a lead magnet, and it's easy for us to be so, immersed in our own echo chamber that we think everyone knows what we know, but they don't.
No. And it is interesting, because once in a while, I mean, I'm quite well networked. Like, there are certain groups where I practically know everyone, and like conferences I go to, and it feels like going into a big family reunion. I know everybody and it feels really good. And then once in a while I step out of that and I meet people who aren't in that bubble of online marketing. I was on a podcast actually with a friend, but she obviously didn't know very much about what I did, like the nitty gritty. We were talking about offers, and she thought I meant like bog off offers, like offers in a supermarket, like 2 for 1. And I was like, oh no, we're at completely cross purposes here. And I suppose the point I'm making with that is, be aware when you're getting feedback from people who are not your ideal client and would never in a million years be your ideal client, because what they say shouldn't influence what you do.
Yes. I had a really good, I think it was Laura Robinson from Worditude. She said, don't create your freebies on what your customers would like, because actually these are the people before they've become a customer. So it's like taking it back, that one. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's really, really helpful, because it's easy for us to think about, oh, have our customers in our minds, but it's not them. They've already come along the journey. It's the people before them that we want to be reaching with our freebies.
Yeah. I mean, that whole thinking about the buyer decision making journey is really helpful. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just, okay, at some point, they're not even aware of their problem. They're not even aware that they have a problem. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is they're creating content. They're trying to convince people who don't even have a problem. They don't even know they have a problem yet. And you're wasting your breath. You've got to wait for them it's horrible, because you can see you can help them. You've got to wait for them to reach that realization themselves. So when they start thinking, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I do have a problem around here. Maybe I do need to look for a solution. And then you can sort of pick them up and take them more towards helping them make a decision. It is hard if you have the type of service. I've had a couple of these types of clients. They have the type of like a cutting edge service that isn't normal. It's like an unusual new type of service. Imagine coaching when it first started becoming popular or known about. Like now, everyone in my communities, they know what coaching is. But a couple of decades ago, nobody would have wanted to spend money on coaching in this country, in the UK.
And that's the thing, like you say, when they don't even realize that they've got a problem, they're not going to be parting with money because they don't know they've got a problem. So they don't know they need a solution. And I totally agree. That's where some people are really, really stuck and just not understanding why people aren't buying. But yeah, it's great. So one thing I want to come on, because by the way, I love your website. It's really clear and lovely. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, it's a great example. You talk about sizzling hot offer creation. So can you give us a few tips on how to make your offer sizzling hot?
So I've got 3 Ps of my sizzling hot offer creation process. Marketers do love a P. P's everywhere. So my 3 Ps are the promise, the package, and the price. The promise is what would you love to be able to promise somebody if they were their ideal client and they did all the work and everything went smoothly? Like, what would you love to be able to promise? What is that tangible thing? If you can make it as tangible as possible, bearing in mind, often it's hard to make the intangible tangible. But what would they really, really like? That can become the core of your messaging, and then you can have supporting messages that go underneath that. I recommend 3 because the rule of 3, it's always a nice number. The package is actually what they are buying. Like what are they actually getting from you? How does it work? And that process has to seem logical. It has to make sense. It has to sound valuable. So this is an opportunity for you to brand that process. So it could either be step by step, or it could be pillars. So a lot of coaches, it's not actually a step by step process. It's more, okay, these are my core values, or these are my core techniques that I take people through. But whatever it is, you will have your own unique way of doing it, of approaching it, your own tools that you've sort of adapted to your way of working. Like, can you make that into some kind of model or framework or blueprint? This is where we get into the realms. I see people pushing back on this and going, I'm just making up words. We're just making up acronyms. It's like, yeah, but it really makes it more tangible for the buyer. They understand it better. They understand the benefit more. It seems more valuable. Anything that's going to help them make a decision and understand the value. If you don't do this, you're doing yourself a disservice, because competitors will be doing this and they will have their own proprietary processes and they will have branded it, and they will write a book at some point. And, if you're happy with that, then that's what's going to happen. and the pricing is, I just love talking about pricing, because I think people get their knickers in a twist about pricing. And it's more important and less important than people think. It's more important because if you don't charge enough, you're not going to be able to create a business for yourself. I think some people get into the situation where they think, oh gosh, I want to help good people, and some good people don't have money, so I should help people with no money. And it's like, well, that is a charity. That is not a business. it sounds horrible, but that's rule number one of setting up a business, is to sell to people who've actually got the money to pay you. And the beautiful thing about running an online business nowadays is you can get the money rolling, and then you can create content to help people. You can write a book. You can do a free course. You could even offer some free places. You can offer scholarships or discounted places, but you can only do that once you've got the wheels, turning and the ball rolling in your own business. And on the point about pricing is less important than you think, I think we can, it's so easy to do this. Like, I think we all do this on some extent. We think, gosh, okay, haven't made so many sales of that as I thought I would. Perhaps if I drop the price. But like, seriously, if you had something that was £3,000 and you dropped the price to 2,500, would that really make any difference? Like, no, that's a huge price drop. But people who wouldn't buy at 3,000, there's a different reason other than price why they're not buying at 2,500. And the same goes for an online course. If it was 50 quid and you decided to sell it for 25, like, would you really sell any more? If they're not buying, it's because they don't think it's valuable. They don't see the value for it. They don't realize it's for them, or they don't believe you're the right person to, there's something else going on.
So is there a magic formula for how you can price your offer?
Oh my God, I'm going to create that. I mean, it's not at the moment, but now by the end of the day, there will be.
That's what people ask me all the time. So I'm interested to hear what you would say.
The nearest thing to a formula I can think of, which is useful, is think about how much you'd really, really want to price your thing for, but it would make you feel a bit sick if you actually said it out loud. Like, what is that price? And then think of a wimp out figure that that you're doing yourself a complete injustice, and then go somewhere in between.
I love that. That is brilliant. A wimp out figure. So because I think that there is a feeling that there should be a guide to, well, if I'm offering a 6-session package with this, then the formula means that I charge this much, but there's really not, is there?
No, I think you've got to feel that it's a good deal for them. And you've got to, if you get the sale, you've got to be kicking your heels in delight. Like, that's the formula. If you make the sale and you're like, oh God, I've undersold myself again, then you haven't charged enough. Or if you feel like the person is really, really stretched and you feel like they haven't got a good deal, then you've charged too much. It is so much about emotions. And, you could be selling exactly the same thing today, and then in 6 months' time, the price you charge today could feel like a ridiculously small amount. Like, what was I thinking? It's worth so much more. And nothing's changed apart from your mindset about your value. So the better work to do is probably get clear on the value that you are providing. Like, get fully clear, review the testimonials, do some journaling, remind yourself of all the experience and the training that you've done to get here. The stuff that makes you unique, that somebody else, your competitors that you compare yourself to, that they couldn't come up with. Like, the amount of times I've looked up to somebody and thought, oh my gosh, I could never be as successful as them, and they're charging so much more than me. And then, I hear clients come to me who've worked with them. I'm like, what did they do? What did they not do? What am I worried about? I'm doing so much better job. I'm not owning it like they are.
And it is that, I love the quote about don't compare your backstage with someone else's front stage.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, we could talk about this for so long, but we're coming towards the end. And what we haven't really talked about is the kind of life friendly approach, because I know that you said that you've had to set your business up in a life friendly way. So I don't know whether you want to share anything about that, or give any tips on how you can run a successful business, but still have that time, raising your kids with your family, all those kind of things.
Yes. Life friendly is such a good phrase. That's what I wanted from my business when I was setting it up. And I've got 2 kids, one just started secondary and one in primary still. And I want to be there. I want to drop them off. I want to pick them up. I mean, that is part of my picture of success, is being there for them, being able to help them with their homework, and not being stressed, not being, being a ball of anxiety for them to absorb. I think what has helped my own business is boundaries, setting your own boundaries. Like, I laugh at myself when I first set up my business. I took on this client who was wonderful, but he was like, okay, so when should we have our sessions? And I said, oh, well, when do you tell me? When do you want them? And he was like, oh, at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. And I was like, yeah, sure. So at 8 a.m., I'm barely out of bed at that time. I had kids trying to feed and get their clothes on. I had to ask my husband to deal with the school run so that I could slap on some makeup and hair off into his office, because I didn't have an office at the time. So I had to use his office for an hour. It was ridiculous. Putting my whole life out of sync. Now, the client didn't ask me to do that. That was my fault. If I'd said I only work 9:30 to 2:30, he'd have gone, okie dokie, we'll do it at 9:30 then. Like, this was not a nasty person. This was like a really lovely guy. So that has, from then on, it was like, oh, hello, you set the times. If the clients can't work with you during those times, I'm sorry, but it's just a no-go. And the other thing that I've managed to crack, which took a while, I wanted to focus on my business and my marketing and that kind of thing on a Monday and a Friday. I wanted to do only client work and sales calls and things Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It took me such a long time to honor that. Somehow other things would creep in, but now I've cracked it, and they are sacred, and it has made such a difference.
That is brilliant. And that's everything that I talk about as well, how important those boundaries are. And I think, I talk a lot about taking CEO time, and I do that on a Monday morning. And it's about not being so reactive that you're immediately going into your inbox and firefighting. It's about taking that time to be proactive. And I know that's the thing I have to remind myself, like, I am not going to impinge on that time, because I know how much it sets me up for the rest of the week. And so it's like reminding ourselves of why we've chosen to do things the way that we have. Because otherwise, it's so easy to bend over backwards for other people and think, oh, but I really need that money coming in, so I'll say yes to the client. I don't dare negotiate with them, because what if they say, well, that's no good, I need 8 a.m.,
Yeah. No, I saw one of your posts with the CEO morning with a cup of coffee. I was like, oh, I'm doing my CEO time wrong. I want to go to a nice cafe and have a nice coffee. Why am I doing that?
Yeah, no, it's like, it's a gift to myself. I love it. It is like, for me, it's changing that environment. It's getting away from the dishwasher and thinking, oh God, I should put the washing on. It's like completely removing myself. And then I know when I get home and sit down at my desk, I'm in a different headspace. So thank you so much. So many useful tips in there. I feel like there's lots more that we could be talking about. I know that you're going to do a session for the Cocoon membership as well, which is amazing, sharing your tips. Where can people find out about you?
If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is my home, Janine Coombes. Come and find me and connect with me. Also, we talked a lot about pricing today, and I've got a charge more guide if people if they've been putting off charging more. And the URL is janineCoombes.co.uk/charge-more-guide.
Brilliant. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Janine. Great to speak to you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
If you're ready to take your business to the next level but are not quite sure what the next best step is, fill out the form at lifefriendlybusiness.com/next step, and I'll get back to you personally with bespoke advice on how to move forward. I look forward to connecting.